Here's a great recipe to make your own tomato juice. Tomatoes, salt, water, a little white vinegar, a tiny bit of brown sugar, and a little bit of baking soda. A big pot, a blender, and a stove to boil it on. Here's the deal. Take your blender and take some whole tomatoes that you've washed. Make sure you take the little tags off. Just cut them down. What I do is I put them on the cutting board with the stem side down, and I take a serrated bread knife, like one of the big scallop sort of serrations, and I sort of cut through it 4 times and then turn it halfway and cut through it 3 times, and then it kind of fall like a flower. It's still connected at the bottom. That's okay. Just cuts it up. And I take 2 big tomatoes and put them in a blender, or 3 small potatoes, or 4 of the plum tomatoes, put them in a blender, and then add 2 cups of water, and then I blend it until it's pureed. I'll blend it for at least 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. And at the same time, I put the stock pot on the stove, turn it up high heat, and it's getting real hot. And so when these 2.5 to 3 minutes of pureeing of the tomatoes and water are done, I pour it in. It goes, it's real hot, and then I put the lid on, and then I take my next batch of 2 or 3 tomatoes, and I cut them up and put them in. And I do that for 6 or 7 batches. I do a lot at once. I'm going to make a gallon or so, maybe 2 gallons of this juice. Why not? It's so simple. Here's what I'm doing. I'm pureeing everything that has to do with the tomato: the skin, the seeds, the jelly, and the meat. As it turns out, all the good things to keep your platelets healthy and keep your arteries flowing good come from the seeds and from the skin and from the jelly around the seeds. And those are the things that manufacturers take away before they make your tomato purees and pastes and things like that. And they do what we do with so much of the fiber in our diets. They feed it to the animals. And then we eat the animals, and the animals have no fiber. Pretty ironic, right? There's no fiber in any meat product. Absolutely no fiber in any meat product. And there's no cholesterol in any plant product or fungus product. Pretty interesting, huh? So anyway, after doing each batch for 2.5, 3 minutes, pureeing it, and I put it in the stock pot. The great thing about it is if I have enough to do 7 batches in the blender, that takes me 21 minutes. And because I'm boiling it a blender's worth at a time, remember, 2 big tomatoes and 2 cups of water, or 3 medium to small tomatoes and 2 cups of water, or 4 plum tomatoes and 2 cups of water for each blender thing. Bottom line, you're trying to get it with just enough water to puree it really good, and you're going to boil some water off too. So, and you're not going to strain this. This is going to be it with the pulp in there, which makes it thick. Oh, it's so good. Do all that, boil it with the lid on, and ironically, by the time I get the last batch, the 7th batch done from the blender and pour it in, everything's boiling. I recommend doing it like that instead of doing it all at once and then putting it on the stove to boil. This way, gosh, I'm 20 minutes ahead of the game. All right, so I got all this 7, 8 batches of stuff from the blender in the big stock pot, and it's boiling, and I keep the lid on, and then that's when I add a 1/4 cup of white vinegar and about a 1 packed tablespoon of brown sugar and 2 tablespoons of salt. This is a lot of stuff. And a teaspoon of baking soda. Now, of course, that'll foam up with the vinegar and all that. And it actually breaks down cell walls a little bit with ions and all that. So that's why I do all that. Boil it with the lid on for 20 minutes. That's plenty. And actually, what I do is I like to, just as a ritual, take the lid off and boil it for 5 more minutes with the lid off. Don't have to do that. When it's done, let it sit until it's cool and pour it into big pitchers. Stir it before you pour it into the pitchers because it's going to have all the pulp and stuff really nice and pureed in there. Put it in the fridge. And you know what happens overnight? It gets really cold and really thick, and it tastes like V8 juice without that cooked, weird, metallic taste. And my body just loves it, just sucks it up. Tomatoes, salt, white vinegar, a little baking soda, a little brown sugar, water, a blender, a stock pot. Oh, it's really good. Tomato juice. Oh, you know what you can do? You can make it for your cocktail party, and you can bring it to the cocktail party. And if you don't want to drink anything, you can just drink it on ice. And if you do want to drink and you want to be fancy, you can buy a really good bottle of vodka and take vodka and your homemade tomato juice. Oh, that's a Vegor friendly cocktail gift.